What is up, everyone? Here with me, talking a little bit of devs, are the Sci-Fi boys. We're big brain trio with Evan, Josh, and myself.
Hello.
Welcome.
Heyo.
Welcome.
And as mentioned, we're talking Alex Garland's miniseries. Alex Garland, for those that I don't know, maybe live under a rock, he has made two of the most interesting sci-fi films of this decade or this past decade, and Annihilation and Ex Machina, and he's been a terrific writer even before that. So of course this was like kind of hyped. A lot of people were really interested because of Garland's track record, but just general thoughts. Evan, I'll let you go first, just without spoilers. What do you think of the show? What do you think of it as like a sci-fi piece? Thoughts?
Well, I love the idea. The kind of sci-fi I live for. Alex Garland really knows how to spin some sci-fi. I was really blown away by the cinematography. I mean, I just think it's it's movie level, gorgeous looking cinematography that you're not going to find anywhere else on TV. Although a lot of TV has been upping its game. You can find movie quality cinematography in a lot of places like Better Call Saul or a lot of HBO stuff, but it also has the music, the design of the buildings, the main, devs community, and just the whole campus looks incredible. The music is I love his choices. He does a lot of interesting stuff where the music's telling you things about the story maybe, and the big criticisms of our characters, but I actually really was so caught up that I never really was bothered by the acting of the people. I think most of it was probably designed to be acted the way, but some people just didn't like it. I was fine with it. I actually really liked the characters that even some people called stiff. Love Nick Offerman, probably my favorite, but I also like Jamie, even though he's stiff. I just enjoy the way he's doing it. Yeah, I kind of like pretty much everything about this series. I don't know if it's better than Ex Machina, but it's one of my favorite series I've seen all year, and we'll see if it holds up till the end. But yeah, I really love it.
I'll let Josh go next. Just general thoughts on series.
Yeah. I really love the show. I would say that I would echo a lot of what Evan said already, but in addition, I'll say more detailed stuff about this in a little bit, but I really like the arc of the show, the way they shape the story. I think it really works well specifically for a miniseries.
I actually do have a question since you're bringing that up right now. I've heard this from a couple people. Do you think this series could have worked as a movie directed by Garland?
No,
I don't think so.
No,
I don't think so either.
Or
yeah,
there's not enough time.
Yeah, definitely. And that's kind of actually exactly the point I'm making. Like, the show knows that it's a miniseries. It knows its limitations. It knows the confines of its own story. And it sticks to those in a way that I think is really admirable and effective from an artistic standpoint. So I really like that about the show. And then I would just add that I like what they do with the ideas that animate the show. I think the show does an interesting thing where it takes sort of like confusing ideas in contemporary science that a lot of sci-fi works of art deal with now, and it gives itself a little bit of artistic license to kind of bend them in interesting ways. So it is bending science a little bit, but it's sticking to the sort of logic of the universe it builds within the show in a way that for me is really compelling, even if I might have some objections to how realistic I think it might be. Within the show itself, it really works. So yeah, I'm a huge fan. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm probably going to echo a little bit, but some things a little bit lesser that I can get into with spoilers. I don't say that. I have a couple gripes. One of the things Evan mentioned is something that we've talked about. I thought the acting between two of the leads at times was a little bit stilted, and I think the only reason that's felt for me is because the actors that are in the devs team are really doing like some tremendous work in terms of like sci-fi big brain people that are creating something. I think they all do like a tremendous job of I mean they're all pretty much character actors. You have Nick Offerman, who isn't a star. You have Allison Pill, the priest from Lady Bird, and I can't remember the actor that's in that squad. I can't find it at the moment, but no, they're very good, and I think it's just more like they're not at the same level. Oh, it's Jamie, played by Jin Ha. I think he's also really fun. But they're really good, and I think that just is me being like, oh well, like that's the fun part, if that makes sense. And I think they're still great. But the only thing I guess I would mention with the show as well is that is one of the things that I do love about it is the production value behind it. And I did feel this way with Westworld, but it's almost a different ball game with HBO because they have a lot of money that they're willing to pump into shows, whereas Netflix, Amazon, and even Hulu have never really shown that willingness. Even if they've had things like Stranger Things, the effects don't look that great in Stranger Things. What they're selling is the camaraderie of things.
In terms of numbers of dollars, I'm pretty sure all those companies have put up the money.
No, but no. For individual shows, I feel like in fairness, I guess, where I'll push back on my own point, Alex Garland knows how to make something on a budget. But I just feel like from any studio, any streaming service besides HBO, things have still looked a TV quality to me. And this is something interesting where it's like, oh no, this is like the same visuals that I get from Westworld. And I think a lot of that is to do with the production design team that went into this and just a little bit of the touch-ups in After Effects they did, especially around the devs headquarters, I thought really elevated that.
Yeah, actually, just a quick note about set design, something me and Evan were talking about the other day. There's some cool stuff that they do with the design of the devs location specifically, that you may not notice otherwise, but if you do know it, it just is an extra layer of fun. So the sort of like golden room where the computer is, where they do all of their coding and whatnot, that design is very much based on real scientific detectors. So there are these, we don't need to get into the science of it, but there are these types of detectors that
are you gonna Neil deGrasse Tyson us?
No, I'm not. I'm gonna
I'm just kidding.
Your understanding of the show, Hayden. I mean, his whatever your name is. Anyways, there are these types of detectors that are built specifically to detect these types of particles called neutrinos. You can Google neutrino detector if you want. Anyways, they look exactly like the big computer room. Like they're golden, they're very large, and if you just look on Google Images, there's a very big one. I can't remember what it's called, but it's in Japan, and it looks almost identical. So they're clearly basing they have people working on the set design who really know what is happening in contemporary science, and they're really paying attention to that, even knowing that most of the people watching the show won't pick up on that. They'll just think, oh cool, it's a golden room, that's incredible. But there's some sort of fan service there to a certain cohort of viewers that I think adds an extra level of appreciation, even at the level of set design. There's some really cool stuff like that. So yeah, Google it.
The only other point I was going to throw out that I think is a little bit of a weird thing about the show, and I think we'll get into this more in spoilers, and I'm pretty sure you guys are the opposite of me. I guess we'll see. I actually think the first episode of this show is the best episode, and I think it's just I don't think it just sets up the world so well. And I don't think it was the hardest one necessarily. Well, no, in some ways, I do think it is the hardest one to pull off because, you have to engage the viewer within an hour of time. And I just felt like after that, I was like, I could watch, 10 hours more of this, or you could tell me there's 50 hours coming, and whatever you want to do, Alex Garland, like, I'm here for it. Just because I think, like, that's where they really introduced, like, a thrilling, tense score. They sort of set up questions of, oh, well, what is Devs actually doing? I just feel like it's such a good start to a show, and that's not to say the rest of the episodes aren't great. I don't. How did you guys feel about how the peaks and flows of the show?
Well, in terms of that, a lot of people have complained that the first episode is one of the most incredible pilots ever. And then, like, the second's really good. And then it kind of calms down until probably the episode I'd pick as my favorite, the 7th episode, where kind of everything comes to a head. A ton happens that episode. And then you get your finale the next episode. So I think people occasionally get bored in the middle, like one of our friends who's still trying to get through, because they just think it's a bit slower. But if you're really involved and like interested in the show, there's no wasted time necessarily, except maybe a few scenes. But it's very purposeful, and everything has a ton of interesting stuff going on every episode.
Sure. And the only thing I would throw out real quick, just because I'm on IMDb right now, they actually have the 7th and 8th, like you mentioned, as the highest rated, tied with episode 4.
Which
one
is
surprised. So 4 is where again, trying to stay non-spoilery. 4 is where a certain character has to go see a psychiatrist.
Gotcha.
And then there's
okay.
some ethical disagreements, if you get what I mean.
Yeah. Got it.
Which I think is a great episode too.
I think it's a pretty
I think all episodes are solid. I mean, it ranges from 7.6 to 8.3, which is one thing I wanted to talk about a little bit. I know Alex Garland hasn't been the most well received, I want to say, on IMDb. But this is so weird to me that this has a 7.9 out of 10. I know, just to be clear, I know a 7.9 is a great score, but the way IMDb works is basically if you make a quality show, it's like 8.4 or higher. So it's just like baffling to me that I'm looking at it and it's anything lower than like 8.1, if that makes sense.
It's this weird thing. I feel like people don't know what it is. I've heard pretty much everything comes down to it's a bit slow and tedious for some people. A lot of people do complain about wooden acting, and then maybe people who have problems with time travel, and it just kind of those three are enough to get people to completely ignore like all the other stuff I was talking about loving, like just the writing, the concepts, the look, the feel, the design. But some people just kind of get caught up here, and for some reason, it's not garnering the reviews we would have expected.
And I think part of that is this reminds me a decent bit of Annihilation. I really like Annihilation, but I know it was divisive in a couple ways. And that has a 6.9 out of 10. Where I think Ex Machina is generally well regarded, but even that's at a 7.7. And like for what a lot of people consider one of the best sci-fis of like the 2010s, it's a little weird that's not at like an 8.1, 8.2, you know what I mean? We'll get right into spoilers because I fully recommend this show. I have some problems with it. We'll get in more with spoilers if you've seen it. But if you haven't, definitely go check out Devs. It's well worth your time. Even if, I don't know, if you're not a fan of sci-fi and not a fan, I don't think it's boring by any means. But if you
take what Hayden said though, if you don't like the first episode, you can probably call it quits, I guess. But
for sure, if you're not hooked,
should drag you in pretty quickly.
I remember because I have a little bit of a funny story. I guess you two will get to decide if it's actually funny. I remember watching Devs and I really wanted to talk about it with someone, and I hadn't seen y'all for a hot second. So I was like, "Hey, Dad," and he was like, "Yeah," and I was like, "Watch this show called Devs," and he was like, like he's sometimes kind of like, I don't know if I want to watch this thing that you try, because like I've tried to make him watch a couple different things and he doesn't like all of them. But I made him watch episode 1, and like 5 minutes in, he's like, and then after it, he's like, when does episode 2 come out? And I was like, you watched it, right? And he's like, yeah, it was crazy. And he has some spicy opinions that I guess I'll voice in spoilers.
Oh, good.
But we'll go straight into it. Again, thank you guys for checking out this review. Watch Devs. It's on Hulu. Yeah.